So I'm just starting the recording now, just so everybody knows we are now recording. So do tell us where you are and why you came. And excellent. And if you just joined, probably worth turning your mic to mute, because sadly it's going to be chat in the chat box only, because there's just so many people coming into this. I don't think we're going to be able to hold conversations, unfortunately. Okay, so I think what we'll do is we'll get started. Everybody can come back and find the replay again if we need to. So we'll just get going, I think. So hello, I'm Liz Timoney from Sales Activator, and I'm joined by the very lovely Rain Hitchman. As I said, do say hello in the chat and tell us where you're from and where you're coming from and what you're here for today. We have got a very complex, stressful topic to cover in 30 minutes. So to state the obvious, we are going to keep it simple. We want to maximize the amount of aha moments you get. So we're not going to do too much on the chemical names of everything. We're going to try and keep it simple so that everybody can get the most out of this. Do ask your questions in the chat. We've got people watching the chat. We'll put the answers back out to questions on LinkedIn over the next few days if we don't manage to answer them in the course of what we're doing here. So this mental health crisis is not new, right? 2 years ago, I was in hospital with my ex. He was needing a mental health bed because he had clinical issues. There were 50 requests just in Torbay over that last 48 hours. And there were single-digit numbers of mental health beds available in the country. So this is not a new crisis, right? Rain has been in this area since about 2001 with the financial collapse and following Theresa May's work with the Stevenson Pharma report. And so this isn't new. We've had a lot of information coming out, but it's been compounded by COVID. It's been compounded by Brexit. We're now in the third lockdown, and the feeling of malaise is quite frightening. There is a prevailing feeling of CBA, as my son says, which is can't be asked. So the good news is that because this isn't new, there is thinking out there. There are solutions out there. We've been working on this for years, for nearly 20 years. So we do have some idea of what's working and what's not working. Just let more people into the room, sorry. So we know what will get us to where we want to go. We know that there's a better normal. We know that we can get to a place where we can start talking about growth again. So what are we going to cover? We're going to look at what the future holds for employees' mental health based on neuroscience, based on your feedback, which we'll get from you in a moment. Do turn mics on. Can you turn them off, please? Just because so many people on this call will get distracting and we're recording. Mics off, everyone. Thank you. We're then going to compare the tick box exercise that the government's suggesting around stress and mental health assessments with some more practical tools around mental health and what we can do to measure and assess right now, plus some tips as to what we can do right now. We've also got some discounted slots around a health check that we want as many people to take up as we can. We know what's going to work. We know how to assess this and get some forward traction. We just need more people to start taking some action and making a plan. We've also got loads of downloadable goodies for you. So do hang around and have a look at the website over the next week. You'll be able to download those, all sorts of fascinating stuff there, which I'll tell you a bit more about later. So over to you, lovely Rain.
Thank you so much. It's really a pleasure to be with you all today, about this very difficult and complex subject, as we're saying. And I've been really working in this space for some time as a neuropsychologist, working on wellbeing and performance, and using neuropsychology to really build mental toughness and capability in any kind of area of human endeavour. Certainly building human capital in organisations, both public and private sector. And I work very closely with the NHS, with Mind, with the Royal Voluntary Society, St John's Ambulance, Disability Rights UK. And certainly all of the agencies that I've been talking to are really talking about the fact that, yes, we already have a mental health crisis. It's already here. And that's really backed up by the NHS stating that we're already in the second year of the fastest expansion of mental health services in its history. And what's been really interesting is having a look at the research that's been coming out. And Mind have developed a really useful mental health emergency survey and report, which we're going to be making available to you. And we're really surprised about some of the results that are coming out here. Back in 2020, July 2020, Mind were already saying that 76% of the participants were suffering from mental health issues, and over half were reporting actual depression and anxiety. So we knew that there was a mental health emergency back in 2020, and that's really been compounded since COVID's third lockdown and brought us all into lockdown fatigue and depression. But what's really worrying to the NHS is that actually we're not seeing so many people coming forward to talk about their mental health issues. We know they're out there. As I say, 76% of participants back in 2020 were saying they were suffering. We know they're mentally sensitive. We know that through certainly all my work, with my colleagues' work with mental toughness assessments, that we've actually now seeing since 2020 an even higher uptake in or upsurge in not just mental sensitivity, but real clinical mental health issues coming through. And we're seeing around 84% of people expressing this instability. And we are also identifying that the people who more...
Mic's off, everyone.
Mic's off. And we're also identifying that there are about 16% of people who come up through as mentally tough, and although they're being affected by the events that are happening around us and around them, they are able to more easily regulate their emotions and their responses and retain focus no matter what the challenge, change, stress or pressure it is that they're going through. So we know that there are a lot of people out there who are really suffering. They're not coming forward. We've got a 50% reduction in people coming forward with their mental health issues. And the reasons for that that they're giving is that one, there's the stigma of the coming forward with any kind of mental health issue at a time of COVID. Secondly, we've been told to protect the NHS and to protect lives, and therefore we won't be putting ourselves forward to be a burden on the NHS. And we don't want to go into hospital because that's where COVID is. And at one point, there was a very high transmission rate of COVID within hospitals and people bringing it back out of hospital as well. And so that's put us in a fearful state. And also, we are not sure why we're feeling the way we're feeling and not really understanding that it is a normal response and it's not normalized. So we're just expressing, feeling it, not feeling, understand why we're feeling it the way we are, and just kind of trying to get on with it ourselves in the true British way, stiff upper lip and all of that. But the other thing that we're also identifying is that surprisingly, it's not the people you'd expect to be suffering who are really suffering from mental health. It's 66% of people, 73% of people with reported decline in wellbeing coming actually from the furloughed or change of job. So they've got a job, but they're concerned, they're uncertain, they're unsure, they're not feeling secure, they're not feeling in control. And of course, COVID, Brexit, the financial crisis, the increase since 2001 in terrorist attacks around the world, all of these things, and the Industrial Revolution, the fourth Industrial Revolution, which has put us into the technological and digital revolution, which means we're gaining information and knowledge, fact and fictional, fake news, etc. We're getting into a stage where we are being bombarded with information. We're operating in a completely different way, and everything's changing at fast pace, taking control away from us. And all the institutions, all those leaders, all the people we look to for safety, security, in fact, they're morally and financially have become bankrupt over the years. And so we don't know who to trust or what to do. And that's put us into a state of mental dissonance. So knowing and understanding that we've got all of those people out there, 86% of people are having a real reaction, but 100% of us, we know, are being affected in some way or another. So this is a invisible problem. It's an invisible enemy. We can't see it. We're at war with this invisible force, and all of our control has been taken away from us. So we've got to make the invisible visible, and we need to do that by assessing and finding those people who are at risk, saving them before they move into critical mental health, chronic mental health issues, and enabling them to become well and productive again. So we know they're out there. We've got to find them. We've got some surprising results there in terms of who and what are being affected. But what we're really interested in is, what are your concerns? What are you seeing? What are you hearing? What are you experiencing out there amongst your teams, amongst your family, and even more importantly, for yourself? What are the concerns that you're seeing? Put some messages in the chat box.
So people wanting to explore mental health frameworks, lots of tears. Yes, we're feeling you there, Rebecca. Lots of tears. Lots of can't be bothered in our area. Lack of consistency. We're hearing personally lots of people just not getting no time to themselves, not being able to cope, not feeling like they're doing anything well. People who are usually positive, up one day down the next. Exhaustion, sleep problems.
Lockdown exhaustion, yes. No end in sight, multiple layers of uncertainty, no control over it. Absolutely, yeah, absolutely.
So keep those coming down the side, and we'll pick up with those as we go along.
Homework, yes.
Lots of literacy. How to open up conversations. Good. So there's loads of stuff coming here. Keep it coming. Okay. So what's causing all this stuff that's coming up on the right-hand side, Rain? What's happening in terms of behaviours and outcomes?
Well, absolutely. So we already know what's happening in our macroecology, all of this threat and response that's happening around us, from us actually having clear and present danger, absolutely. And also we're being expected, as some of the comments that are coming up here, we're expected to be working in a completely different way. We're living in a VUCA world, that volatile, uncertain, complex and ambiguous, and it's becoming even more so. We don't know what to do, who's to. We've never been here before, and we're now experiencing being prisoners in our own home. We've been all our personal liberties and freedoms have been removed, and as human beings, we're used to cleaving together, flocking together for safety, security, for nurturing and for support and comfort. And at that very time, we need to come together and work our way as a tribe to support each other. We're being told to stay at home, stay away from loved ones, stay and be disconnected. And that really creates an enormous amount of confusion and brain fog and brain pain around having to do that. It's oxymoronic. It's not what we want to do, and we're very, very concerned. But we're also competing now. We've got all these competing priorities with working at home. So we're in competition with our children and our partners for resources like the technology, like personal space, privacy. Technology, being able to get your hands on technology, competing priorities of delivering for our work, if we are still working from home, and competing with our children because we need to be schooling them as well. There isn't enough time in the day. All that lovely opportunity when we had our commute to work to reset, think, fast forward and plan where we were going and what we were doing and just reset ourselves has been taken away from ourselves. And we're getting into conflict because of our suffocating, as somebody said, space. There's huge, thank you very much, Pete. Yes, there's huge domestic abuse and violence, and there's a very worrying increase in suicides as well. So we absolutely know that we need to be able to connect, reconnect, stay in connection with others. We absolutely know that that's absolutely important. Certainly, we're experiencing some really serious issues here, and from a neuroscience viewpoint, I'm sure everybody understands about the fight and flight response. We have a very sophisticated response system, and we respond to perceived threat as well as real threat. And we do have real threat. People are dying. People we care about are dying, and people are becoming very, very worried. So we're facing adversity. We're facing psychological problems as well as real environmental problems. And our bodies are moving into this fight and flight system, which is driven by the sympathetic nervous system. And that's we're usually in this beautiful green state of being in absolute harmony with our networks of our brain structures, our nerves and our hormones. We are in optimal functioning, everything's fantastic, and we are able to use all the functions of our body and our brain together. But as you probably know, that when we're triggered, the sympathetic system really takes over control of the body and other bodily functions, and that's activated by the amygdala, and that alert system then sends transmissions to the hypothalamus, and that drops the adrenaline, which is the fight and flight hormone, into the system, as we are aware. But also norepinephrine is also dispersed into the body, and that creates us feeling a much more sort of a sense of alert. Those two chemicals together create the fight-flight response, the alert response. It takes our blood away from its usual activities and pumps it into the muscles to allow us to fight and flight, but also to get more oxygen into the body so that we can operate. Our muscles tense up and our heart pounds, and we get this massive shot of glucose to give us energy to go into war, go into battle, or to flee from the situation. But at a slower pace, which is more worrying, is that we're also dropping cortisol into the body. And cortisol is a stress hormone, and that's activated at a slower pace, and it's dropped by using the minor hormones, the CRH and ACTM. You can read them, the cortisotropic releasing hormones, and the other, the adrenocorticotropic. I can't say this, and I've had some surgery on my teeth, so I'm having difficulty speaking, but I will plow forward. So this drops cortisol. This sends the signals to the body to drop cortisol into the body. Now, cortisol is a stress hormone, and too much cortisol over time leads to the immune system breaking down. And that's why people get sick under stress. The immune system breaks down, but we also have metabolic issues in the body. The metabolic functions don't work properly. Blood pressure goes up. We get problems, as somebody was saying, with sleep. Because cortisol regulates your sleep patterns and also helps you to wake up in the morning. So we find it difficult to sleep properly, and we get really heavy levels of fatigue as well. So the effect is to shut down all of the non-essential processes and functions in the body. And unfortunately for us as human beings, it also means that all of our higher functions, when we feel any kind of perceived level of stress, our higher functions of our brain also are cease to be able to be accessed. So the neocortex, where decision-making, rational thought, language, and innovation comes from, also we can't access that. It gets shut down because it's not a function that we believe that our limbic system believes in the moment needs to be operating. So too long in that state gives us brain fog, brain pain, dissonance, confusion, and anxiety and depression. And the fight-flight response takes us from our green homeostasis, equilibrium state, into fight and flight with anxiety and frustration and anger. And that's where you start seeing the abuse and the violence coming through as well. And it's not something we can really help. That happens within 1 second. So we're all experiencing everything that's all threatening. We feel that that everything around us is threatening, and we can't rationalize because we can't get into our rational thought processes and parts of the brain to the level of stress. The level of stress is we just see everything as a threat to our actual survival, and so we overreact. And our behaviours become even more obstinate. If we leave it too long, we'll end up in a state where we are able to regulate our emotions. We become unstable and mentally sensitive, and that takes us from the green zone into the red and amber zones very, very quickly. And we have a lack of stability. So, and over time, that will take us into the blue zone, which is all around where we go into the fight, freeze and fold mode. And freeze and fold means we procrastinate, we give up, and that's where the depression and the clinical depression starts coming in. We give up, we accept that life is over, basically. And
so Rain, this is how we get some of these things that we're seeing on this slide, isn't it? Rebellion caused at work, the resistance, and obviously the knock-on effects that has, instead of what we could be seeing around these nicer, collaborative, innovative kind of states that we want. So perhaps I see we're running quite short on time. Perhaps we could move on. Tell us about the tool that you've been using all this time.
Okay, thank you very much. Yes, absolutely. So absolutely. So to avoid the procrastination, avoid going into the red and amber and the blue zones, what we need to do is to teach people and to identify and assess and identify in people where their levels of mental sensitivity lie, so that we can rebuild their level of appropriate mental toughness and allow them to be much more focused, to allow them to be to have full levels of commitment, so that they are able to achieve their goals and be achievement orientated in the first place. So they're totally committed to what they're doing. The motivation and drive comes back, no matter what the challenge and change or stress and pressures they're feeling. We also look at their risk aptitude. So what is their what's their propensity to work with risk? Without risk, you can't find new options. You can't try something new. And so being risk averse also means being mentally sensitive, because you're not willing to do anything new. You're not willing to put yourself forward. You're not willing to come out of your normal areas. So there's growth there. The under challenge is also the learning orientation, which is all about growth mindset. It's about learning from your failures and recognizing that those failures won't bring you down. Then we have confidence, our confidence in our abilities. Confidence is always knocked, our self-esteem when we are out of control and feeling uncertain. And the interpersonal confidence, as you move from green to red and amber and into the blue zone, we withdraw into ourselves, and a whole load of things happen in the body and the brain as well at that point. And that means that we can't access those higher functions. We can't negotiate. We can't come up with new ideas and opportunities, ways to come out. The brain is looking all the time for threat, but it's also looking for opportunity. So if we can build the resilience back in and the positive mindset, then we can regain control over our lives. And that feeling of control, our life control, that things around us, no matter what happens, we can take control and make it a positive outcome. and our emotional control, we can control our emotions and the emotions of others as well, is really important there. And so to assess and understand the levels of mental toughness and mental sensitivity, which is personal to the individual, their circumstances and situations, to understand that, to be able to assess, we can rebuild the levels of mental toughness through neuro coaching, training, coping mechanisms, brain hacks, a whole series of strategies to enable that mental toughness to come back, so that you can continue to perform and be well and be healthy and happy, and just feel like you've got some certainty back and some positivity back. This is a
case study, isn't it, that you had recently?
Yeah, so this is a case study for a CEO recent. As you can see, it's very recent. So this was the last person I took through the full neuro coaching program, and he'd been in therapy for 30 years with anxiety, and he was, as you can see, in 2020 on the 8th of November, he had moved. One is totally mentally sensitive and actually going into chronic mental ill health. So he with his successful business, he was just overcome, and he was really in a very, very dire place. And I worked with him intensively using the mental toughness and neuro coaching. And by the 21st of December, he had completely transformed. He actually said that this was transformational for him, and that after 30 years of therapy, he couldn't believe how quickly this was improved. And he's healthy, he's happy, his relationships are better, his work colleagues and employees are very much more happy with him. I'm doing a whole case study around him. This was an extraordinary result, and I can't promise this will happen for everybody. Usually you move sort of 4 stems, as it were, on the continuum. So, but what we identify is specifically to you what you need to work on, what's not working, what's got some sensitivity, and where we can turn that up to give you back that feeling of control and capability. So that's a lovely case study. But if you
and we could talk about him all day probably, just even this case study. So I'm aware we've got a couple of minutes more left in the session and people need to get off. So let me just show you a couple of slides here around, where the risk is. If you decide to just do a tick box and hope for the best, the risk on the left hand side, those numbers were back in 2020. I can guarantee they've increased since the new year. Versus if investing in mental health will actually add to the bottom line. Brilliant. Some people saying they're happy to stay on. There will be a replay, so if you do have to nip off, don't worry, you can catch up the last few minutes on the replay. So the productivity, customer advocacy, it's hitting all sorts of useful numbers in order to be able to get the return on the investment that you're putting in. So it's actually, I think, far more risky doing nothing right now, because we can guarantee some of these numbers on the left are going to happen in your business. The HSE is recommending you do a stress risk assessment. I'm not going to go into this. It's loads of detail on their website. Basically, the column on the right there is showing you where they're suggesting you put your attention, and they're mainly factors inside the organization, what the employee is able to do and isn't able to do. As we're seeing, most of the stress, and if you talk to people who are off sick, most of the stress is coming outside of the workplace, and there's less that you can do about this. This is a frustrating thing with mental health. It's inside people's heads. It's very difficult. We can't soothe it like we can a broken leg. So what can we do? So here's some stuff for you to take away right now. So, the things that are becoming mainstream, like meditation, gratitude practices, these kind of water bottles with measurements on them, they're becoming mainstream because they work. It's really, really important. Talk about your feelings more than your thoughts. Think about what you can control. Get outside. If you've got faith, now is the time to revel in it. If it's a love of nature, go and get outside. Try and ditch the social media and do a digital detox at least once a week. We've got a couple of bonuses here around a 21-day happiness program and a neurogenesis diet guide. So much is to do with what's in your stomach and what you're eating. We could do a whole day on that on its own. So we've got some downloads. They'll be on our website, so you can go and get those from there. As an organisation, what are we doing? Well, what we've always done, and we know it works. So the reason we've come on today is because we want as many people as we can to get a team health check, find out how bad the problem is in your organisation, and get some tailored advice as to what to do next. The bonus is it checks the HSE box. You've had the mental health assessment for your team, so it's ticking that box for you. Happy days. After that, you might decide that you need something else. So you've got those people who are maybe at the bottom end of this pyramid who've got some really low MTQ scores. Hopefully that's the minority, not the majority. And you might want to do some one-to-one coaching that, as Rain was just discussing. It might be, there's a bunch of people, maybe, a smaller proportion of salespeople who are really struggling being virtual. They don't know how to act on a camera. They feel intimidated by it. They feel vulnerable, people looking in their house, and they need some virtual presence training. It might be that the leaders are overwhelmed in crisis. They don't know how to manage in VUCA times. They feel like they've lost direction, never mind direction of the company. It may be some consultancy would help. Let's come in and talk to the team, find out where you're going and how we can communicate that and build some trusted cultures to get that engagement, confidence and agility back into the organization again. So there's a whole bunch of stuff we could do. What we're recommending today is just get yourself checked. So just like everybody's check, have you got COVID and we want a vaccine? This is kind of our equivalent of do something preventative about this now. If it's not this tool, find another tool. Just do something that checks how are your people doing, because if they're all at home, you can't see, and as Rain said, they're invisible. You don't know. The ones who are struggling are not the ones that you think they are. We've put this discount on, to get this going, because we want people to take control and plan now, before we get the loss of human capital and the clinical mental health issues going through the roof, and then the pressure that creates on the organisation, on everybody who's left behind. We don't want that to happen. We want to get back to the time where we can get talking about opportunity and growth again. Those are our biggest problems. We'd love that. So my email's on the screen, the website's on the screen. Get yourself some sort of health check for your team, and do some of the things on the previous slide about your personal well-being, and take it lightly. Try and feel good. That's our best advice for you. Thanks so much for turning up. We're going to stay on now. Rain can answer some questions. We'll keep recording this and put this online, but if you need to go, thanks so much for coming.
Yes, thank you.
Some lovely thanks coming in the chat box.
Oh, that's lovely. Yes.
Thank you. And if you've got any questions, do type them in here into the chat box.
I did see a question earlier, which I will answer. Which
go back up there.
That was asking what the normal percentage of people who were sort of like in the clinically mentally sensitive, in a team of. So in a team of 20, normally we would expect to see about 4 people who would be presenting themselves, as very mentally sensitive, and they'd need some help. So 16% of the normal population would be mentally sensitive, 16% would be very mentally tough, and the percentage in the normal population usually is in the middle. So it's a normal distribution curve. We are seeing that increasing, though, of course. So we don't know who those people are. So we need to catch them. We can predict and prevent them moving towards mental sensitivity and clinical mental ill health, or even suffering from any of the the mental dissonance and stress that they're experiencing for common normal mental health problems created by challenge and change. So it's about spotting them, bringing them back, giving the specifics that they need, and helping them to develop appropriate levels of mental toughness. About four out of the 20 would probably need some one-on-one, but the rest of them, it's about raising their awareness and enable them to understand what's happening to them.
And I think the point that we're trying to make is that if you deal with it now, you can have that, that tailored effort, and it's, obviously more expensive to coach people one-to-one than it is to do group sessions on things. But if you wait till those people have gone off with their clinical issues that will develop, and then the extra stress is on the rest of the team, then that 4 in 20 number is going to go right up. And now you've got a real challenge. How do you deal with that? If you lose, say, 50%, if that went up to 10 in 20, you lose 50% of your team off on sickness and stress. It's actually not viable. It's a bit like being told to hold down a full-time job and run a full-time school curriculum with your kids, eh? Not actually possible. Like to be topical.
Yes.
So Anna's saying, do we have a simple checklist or test that we'd recommend before and after a workshop to gauge what impact you've had on mental well-being? So the test is this this health check that we're talking about, that's going to check those 4 C's that Rain was discussing earlier. In fact, let me just move back to those 4 C's. So the control, commitment, challenge, and confidence. And you'd find out who had low scores, and then you could do a more in-depth test to check sort of all 8 of those functions, and look at doing some sort of coaching or some work with that person to pull them up. The other people who are really interesting here, of course, are the ones who are incredibly mentally tough at the moment. There's not many people out there who are scoring highly right now, I don't think. But, wouldn't it be great to know who those people were, and to let them help with this, or to engage them in picking everybody else up and moving this forward again. That sort of CBA attitude, we need those people to pull us forward.
Mm-hmm.
And did that answer your question, or do you have anything else on that? Or if anybody else has anything, otherwise we will wrap up and stop the recording.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah, go for it.
I'm just interested in the pragmatic approach for this. If I wanted to take all our colleagues through this, is it like a series of one-on-one conversations with Rain or yourself, or how does that work?
That's a great question. Shall I pick that one up?
Go for it.
Fantastic. Okay, so yes, what would happen is that that you take your population and you assess them using an online assessment, and from that you will get a heat map which identifies those people who are at risk and to what extent they're at risk, and therefore we can predict the behaviours and the outcomes that they're likely to be being observed at the moment, but also whether they're moving further towards mental sensitivity. And at that point, we would then recommend that part of those individuals that are at the highest level of risk, those most valuable and those highest influences are, or if possible, all the people who are at high risk, get the opportunity to have a one-on-one coaching session. Those people who are at lower risk, they will have some areas of mental sensitivity because everybody's being affected. So what we would then do is we would give them a group session whereby we would talk to them about their results, and we talk to them about this and how to identify where they personally have gaps and opportunities to develop more mentally tough behaviours, coping mechanisms and strategies. We teach it to them then out there and then, along with some of the neuroscience, brain hacks, how to reverse engineer your body chemistry and at will, which we now know we were able to do, and to put ourselves into our best state and take control of our emotions to bring us back into that green equilibrium state of optimal performance and well-being. So assessment, group, individual one-on-one chat, and then basically we would be able to that would deal with the majority of the issues. Anybody who is very, very high risk or really exerting some difficult behaviours and thoughts and feelings, we would recommend the neurocoaching program. So
does that answer your question?
That's really helpful, Rain. Can you just give me a feel for a team of 20?
yes.
What's the cost and time scale for that?
That's probably one we want to take offline because we're recording now, so we just don't want to. We don't want to share any of your information. So,
no worries. Would I speak directly to you, Liz, or to Rain?
if you give me a bell, Rain's time, we have a limit on how much we can use her wonderful neuroscience time. So we try and dedicate all her time to analysing all the information that comes back. And let me collect the information that we need in the beginning. So, and I can give you all the information you need on the pricing there. So that's easy.
Thank you for your help.
Do either drop me an email or phone or link in and we'll start a conversation that way. Anyway, whatever's easiest for you.
Will do. Thank you.
Pleasure. Okay. Oh, and Nat's just had another question there. Interested in what you said about nutrition impacting too. Can you say more? There's loads of fascinating research going on there. There's a company called Biome that's been started by a guy called Naveen Jain, who has taken this notion that all illness starts in the gut. Apparently 98% of the hormones expressing themselves in your gut aren't yours, i.e. aren't from your mother or father, they're from food or foreign bodies or drugs that you're taking. And that they're causing, he claims, all chronic illness. So his moonshot is in 10 years, he wants to get rid of all chronic illness by assessing the microbiome. So, you know, and he thinks it can be treated by food. So there's evidence now. I mean, you know yourself, right? If I eat bread, I look 6 months pregnant pretty much within 20 minutes. Certain foods will make me feel really good. Certain foods make me feel terrible. But, you know, the extent to which this goes is much more if you go down the kind of hormonal route of it. Mm-hmm. Rain, would you add to that?
Yeah, absolutely. And what Liz says is absolutely fascinating about this Biome group. There's some really simple things that you can do. So for neurogenesis, to build more brain functions, it's about using antioxidants to deal with the immune system. It's taking on board as much vitamin C and antioxidants as you can possibly do. If you want to increase your uptake of serotonin, the happiness chemical, it's about moving more towards a high protein diet, but bringing in for the serotonin to be able to bypass through the blood barrier that protects the brain, and so it's uptaken into the brain and increases the serotonin. You need about 25 to 30 grams of carbohydrate in your diet as well. So it's to lower your carbs, because carbs, especially processed carbs, can create issues, allergies in the gut and create inflammation, which obviously leads to disease. But take about 25 to 30 grams of carbohydrate with a high protein diet like salmon and turkey, and then whole grain rice. That will increase your serotonin uptake and make you feel happier and healthier as well. So there are a number of kind of life hacks, brain hacks that we can share around nutrition. And if you have a look at the Neurogenesis diet sheet, that will help as well.
So that will be available on the website. We'll stick that out and comment. And if no one else has anything else, I'll stop recording now. And Nat says, wonderful, thank you.
Thank you, Nat.
Thank you, everybody, so much for your attention and interest. And this will be put onto YouTube. We'll stick the link out there. I'll be posting about this all next week as well, probably. So any more information that you need, shout. Thanks, everyone.
Great session. Thank you very much.
It was a pleasure.
Thank you so much, James.
For sharing your knowledge. Thank you so much.
Cheers.
Pleasure.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye now.
Bye, everyone. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye, Nat.
Bye.